Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Lieutenant Commander Peter Bartholomews. We warmly welcome the family of Bombardier Robert William Argyle Stevenson, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial and family this evening. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts, of beauty rich and rare. In history's page, let every state announce Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, and dance Australia fair.
Please be seated if you can do so. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the hearts of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Bombardier Robert William Argyle Stevenson. Robert Stevenson was born in 1892 in Malden, a gold mining town about 140 kilometres from Melbourne, the son of Rowena and William Stevenson. Known as Bob, he grew up in Yarraville, an inner western suburb of Melbourne, where he attended the local state school. He then took on a 3-year apprenticeship before working for a Yarraville grocer. He also served in the Naval Reserve Forces, which drilled part-time in nearby Williamstown, and was a member of the local Masonic Lodge. On the 20th of July 1915, Robert Stevenson enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force. Given his experience with the Naval Reserve, he first joined a naval unit. In August 1915, he transferred to a hospital unit for about a month. In September, he was posted to the military police, but after a few months, he was transferred to miscellaneous reinforcements. In March 1916, Stevenson embarked from Melbourne on the troop ship Malwa, bound for overseas service. Shortly before sailing, he married his sweetheart, Elizabeth Edith Hodgkins, known as Edie. Landing in Egypt in April 1916, Stevenson was sent to France the following month, making his way to the 4th Field Artillery Brigade and gaining the rank of gunner. The brigade and its 18-pounder guns and vehicles had reached Armentières shortly before being joined by Stevenson. Located near the French-Belgian border, the fighting at Armentières was less intense than in other areas along the Western Front, and the Allies used the location as a nursery sector where new units could be introduced to the rigours of trench warfare. Stevenson's first major offensive was the Battle of the Somme. The fourth was deployed near Pozières in late July and was involved in constant action against the Germans. In September, there was relief as Stevenson and his comrades moved to Ypres in Belgium, and in November they returned to the Somme to the town of Bapaume, 10 miles northeast of Pozières. As the harsh winter began to set in, the brigade experienced its first gas attacks. In March 1917, the Germans withdrew to the Hindenburg Line and the 4th moved forward to Bullecourt. In April, Stevenson reported sick with skin complaint, psoriasis, and after treatment he was discharged the following month. In June, his brigade moved to Flanders. The men were in constant action supporting Allied attacks on Messines, Menin Road, Polygon Wood, Boudenside and Passchendaele. As part of the Third Battle of Ypres, Stevenson had a period of leave in England in September 1917, but returned to France with a promotion to Bombardier, as his brigade had suffered its heaviest casualties of the war. In March 1918, Stevenson was briefly detached from his unit in order to attend salvage school. As the Germans launched their spring offensive, he rejoined his unit to support the Australian forces as they absorbed the German push. When the Germans broke through to Villers-Bretonneux the next month, the 4th moved to the Somme. As the Australian offensive began in August, the brigade supported the infantry as it broke German lines at Péronne and Mont-Saint-Quentin. After the capture of Mont-Saint-Quentin in September, the men of the brigade were given a brief period of respite. There was a brigade sports day held on the last day out of the line, with 2 bands and visiting officers and nurses adding to the spectacle. Returning to the fray on the 12th of September, the brigade began a series of forward pushes against the Hindenburg Line. In the unit's war diary, note is made that, while orders were often late in coming through, the batteries were all well organised and took an absolute minimum of time to work their barrage out. It also noted that casualties have regrettably grown. Among the casualties was Bombardier Robert Stevenson, who was wounded in action on the 18th of September. Stevenson was brought to a field ambulance after his left leg had been shattered by a shell and died of his wounds shortly afterwards. He was 26 years old. Today, his remains lie in Cerisy-Gaillard, French National Cemetery, beneath the inscription chosen by his grieving wife, Edie. Beloved husband of E. Stevenson, not my will, but thine be done. Among his belongings eventually returned to Australia was a lock of his wife's hair. Robert Stevenson's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Bombardier Robert William Argyle Stevenson, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Bombardier or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial, and we wish you all a very good evening.